She woke up to darkness, cold, damp, and utterly silent. The only sound was the faint drip of water from a rusty pipe, echoing like a countdown. My daughter, a sweet, disabled 10-year-old who had never even spent a night away from home, was trapped in a locked basement beneath her own school. No phone, no food, no way to reach anyone. And the person who did this? The woman in charge of our homeowners association? Karen, a woman obsessed with control and rules, who believed my daughter was a disruption to her perfect little world. The day it happened, Karen told us she was going on vacation. What she didn't say was that she had the keys, the power, and apparently no conscience. My daughter screamed until her voice cracked, banged until her hands bled, and prayed until she passed out from exhaustion. No teacher noticed. No janitor checked. No one came. The school thought she'd gone home. We thought she was still inside, but the basement door stayed locked. And Karen? She was sipping cocktails 2 states away. The question isn't just how this happened, it's how many chances people had to stop it and didn't. It's about what happens when authority is abused so quietly that no one thinks to question it. But the worst part? It wasn't the darkness. It wasn't even the cold concrete floor. It was knowing, at just 10 years old, that someone did this to her on purpose and might get away with it. We moved to Whispering Oaks last spring. It was the kind of neighborhood you see on postcards, neatly trimmed hedges, mailboxes painted to match pastel-colored houses, and smiling joggers waving at each other like something out of a commercial. After years of scraping by in apartments that smelled like mold and fighting landlords for basic rights, this house was our dream come true. We were finally homeowners. It felt like we were entering a safer world, a place where our daughter, Ellie, could grow up without the daily stress that had haunted us for years. Ellie was born with a neurological condition that made her development slower than most children. She used leg braces to walk and often needed assistance with speech. But what Ellie lacked in mobility, she made up for in spirit. She had a laugh that could make an entire room pause. Her teachers used to say she had a soul older than the stars, and I believed it. She loved puzzles, the color blue, and telling stories about imaginary animals who lived on clouds. For us, she was the center of our universe. So, when we finally found a house near a public school with a strong special needs program, it felt like fate had thrown us a lifeline. My husband, James, worked from home as a graphic designer, and I took a part-time job at the local library so I could walk Ellie to school every morning. Life finally felt good, until Karen. Karen was the president of the Homeowners Association. We met her the day we moved in. She didn't introduce herself with cookies or a smile. No, she came with a clipboard. "You'll need to repaint that trim," she said flatly, not bothering to make eye contact. And the mailbox is an inch too close to the curb. We've had complaints. We hadn't even unpacked our boxes. I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she was just passionate about maintaining the neighborhood standards. But over time, it became painfully clear Karen wasn't interested in community. She was interested in control. She patrolled the streets like a hawk, with binoculars. Kids riding bikes were violations. Dogs barking were disturbances. And Ellie, well, Ellie was a special case. I'll never forget the first complaint she filed about Ellie. Ellie had drawn chalk butterflies on the sidewalk in front of our home. It was a sunny afternoon, and she was so proud of her work. I even posted a picture on Facebook, thinking it was a sweet little moment. The next day, we got an email titled Violation Number 47, Defacement of Common Grounds. Karen claimed Ellie's chalk art had lowered the aesthetic value of the street. I stood there, reading the message in disbelief, while Ellie sat on the floor, humming and coloring in her sketchbook, unaware that her innocent joy had offended someone's fragile sense of order. From that day on, Karen seemed to make Ellie her personal target. She'd glare from her front porch whenever we walked by. One morning, Ellie's speech device accidentally said a word twice at the bus stop, and Karen turned to the other parents and muttered, "Do they not teach her how to behave?" I confronted her once, asking politely if there was something we could do to make things easier. She smiled, a tight, artificial smile that never reached her eyes, and said, "Some people just don't belong in communities like this. That's all." That word, belong, stuck with me. Karen didn't see Ellie as a child. She saw her as clutter, as disruption, as something that didn't fit into her neat, little version of Whispering Oaks. And the school? God, even the school didn't help much. Whispering Oaks Elementary had a beautiful brochure about inclusivity, about creating a safe environment for every child. But behind the paper smiles, I could feel the hesitation. Ellie's teacher, Miss Green, was young and kind, but overworked. The special needs coordinator had 5 other schools to manage. We felt like we were always asking for too much. Then came the day Ellie wandered slightly off the sidewalk on her way home, picking up a feather. Harmless. But Karen saw it. That evening, she stormed up to our front door, livid. "Your daughter trampled my petunias." She was chasing a feather. I replied calmly, holding back the urge to scream. "She didn't even enter your yard." Karen pointed to a thin patch of soil by her driveway, as if it were a crime scene. Rules are rules. If you can't control her, maybe she shouldn't be here. I slammed the door in her face. It was the first time I'd ever done something like that, and it felt good, but it also felt dangerous. Because Karen wasn't just a mean neighbor, she had power. Real, documented, procedural power. The HOA had authority over property warnings, community surveillance permissions, even school liaison programs. And Karen knew how to use every rule, every technicality, to make life harder for people she didn't like. We started noticing strange things. Ellie's accommodations at school would suddenly disappear for a week. Her speech tablet wasn't charged, or her ramp was under maintenance. One afternoon, the bus dropped her off 2 blocks away instead of our street, and the driver nervously said, it was a routing change. HOA complaint. Karen, it turned out, had begun corresponding directly with the school on safety concerns. She claimed Ellie was disruptive in class, even though her teachers had never once said that. She called the district board twice about unsanitary behavior because Ellie once drooled during recess. We felt like we were being erased silently, efficiently. Then, 2 days before the incident, Karen posted in the neighborhood Facebook group, "Vacation time. I'll be out of town for the week. Keep whispering, Oak's beautiful," while I'm gone grinning face with smiling eyes. I didn't think much of it at the time, until Ellie didn't come home. Until the school said she was marked as left early with guardian, but no one knew who. Until we called every parent, every staff member, until we checked the streets, hospitals, even the creek nearby, until James nearly broke the school's office door down at 10 p.m., screaming, "Where is my daughter?" And until we found out that someone had access to the building keys, had filed a temporary maintenance hold on the basement, and had signed the form using a digital HOA override code. Her name? Karen. She had locked Ellie in, then driven off for vacation. It started small. The kind of thing you might brush off or laugh about later over coffee, saying, "Can you believe that happened?" But when the same thing happens again and again, it stops being harmless. It starts feeling like you're being watched, like every move is being logged by someone waiting for you to trip. For us, that someone was Karen. One morning, I walked Ellie to the corner where her school bus stopped. She was wearing her favorite hoodie, sky blue, with a tiny stitched elephant over her heart. Her leg braces squeaked softly with each step, and she held my hand tighter than usual. "I don't want to go today," she whispered, barely audible. "Why, honey?" I bent down to meet her eyes. She stares. Ellie said, "The angry one. The stairs lady." I didn't understand what she meant until I looked up, and there she was, Karen, standing behind her curtain on the second floor of her perfectly beige house, watching from the window like a gargoyle carved in disapproval. Arms crossed, not moving, just staring. Ellie wasn't exaggerating. It wasn't a glance. It was surveillance. I gave a small, sarcastic wave. Karen didn't react, didn't blink. I suddenly felt like I'd stepped into a horror film, the kind where the monster doesn't need to move to be terrifying. That same week, Ellie's teacher emailed us. Ellie seemed unusually anxious in class today. She kept asking if someone would follow her to the bathroom. "Is everything okay at home?" Yes, I thought. Everything's fine at home. It's out here that isn't. I responded politely, asking if the school could look into what was bothering her. They assured me they would. 2 days later, Ellie came home crying. Not teary, not upset, crying like her world had cracked open. She threw her backpack down and ran straight to her room. I followed, heart thudding. I found her curled in her blanket, clutching her stuffed bunny, eyes red. She yelled at me, "Who, baby?" "The angry lady." Outside the gate. I froze. "Karen?" Ellie nodded quickly. She said I was dirty, that I touched things I shouldn't. She told me not to breathe near the flowers. I was shaking, not with fear, with rage. The next morning, I marched straight to Karen's door. I knocked 3 times, firm and clear. She didn't answer at first. When she did, she barely opened the door more than a crack. "Can I help you?" she said coolly, eyes already rolling. "You spoke to my daughter yesterday." "I did," she replied, unbothered. She was playing with the gate lock. "That's dangerous." "She has motor issues." She was leaning for balance. "She was fiddling," Karen insisted. "And this isn't the first time. Your child doesn't seem to understand boundaries." I wanted to scream. Instead, I held my breath and said through clenched teeth, "You terrified her." "She needs to learn," Karen said, and shut the door in my face. I reported the incident to the HOA. I wrote a formal letter, attached it to an email. I even went to the community liaison and the school safety officer. Each time, the answer was the same: "We'll look into it." Or worse, "We understand Karen has a strong personality, but she hasn't technically broken any laws." That word again. Technically. Karen was a master at staying just on the right side of the law, just close enough to terror to make your life unbearable without leaving bruises. She used rules like blades: clean, sterile, impossible to trace. Then, a week later, things escalated. The school called around noon. Ellie hadn't arrived, but the bus picked her up, I said, panic rising. She left at 7:45, like always. I watched her board. "Did you sign the early dismissal form?" the secretary asked. "What dismissal form?" "She was checked out this morning. The note says a guardian picked her up." My stomach flipped. No one picked her up. They went quiet. The next 30 minutes were a blur. I called James, who raced to the school. I called the police. I called the bus company. They confirmed she boarded the bus and was dropped at the school gates, somewhere between the school entrance and the classroom. Ellie had disappeared. Security footage showed her walking in, waving to the front desk, then heading toward the side hallway, the one that leads past the supply rooms, janitor closets, and old basement stairwell. Then the footage cut. "We've had issues with that camera," the janitor muttered when we demanded answers. Convenient. An hour later, a call came in. A first-grade teacher, Ms. Hannah, was walking by the maintenance wing when she heard something. Knocking. Soft, panicked. Then a sobbing. They unlocked the basement door. Ellie was sitting on the bottom stair, knees pulled to her chest, rocking gently. Her speech device was dead. Her bunny was missing. Her lips were cracked. She had been down there for nearly 4 hours. When I arrived, she ran into my arms and cried so hard, she vomited on my sweater. The EMTs checked her vitals, and though she was stable, they noted early signs of dehydration and emotional trauma. I turned to the principal. How did this happen? They had no answer. Then, something strange occurred. An officer reviewing the security badge log discovered that someone had used a building override code to unlock the side door, a code that only the school admin and one other person outside the staff had access to. The HOA liaison, Karen. The system showed that an HOA override was used at 8:19 a.m., right before Ellie would have passed through that wing. The code was active for 6 minutes. The door to the basement was opened once during that window. Karen's vacation Facebook post was still live, on the road. Nothing like getting out of town for a bit sun nail polish. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. She had left, but not before making sure my daughter disappeared. Still, when the police asked for formal action, Karen denied everything. "I was already gone," she said smoothly. "You can check my GPS. I left early this morning." "But the code?" I left my laptop logged in, she shrugged. Maybe someone else used it. Maybe the system glitched. I don't know. And again, technically there's no proof. No camera. No fingerprints. Just a child's trauma and a digital timestamp that could be dismissed as a malfunction. The district refused to press charges. The HOA called it an unfortunate coincidence. And Karen? She came back 3 days later, walking her dog, smiling at the neighbors like nothing had happened. But she didn't wave at us. She didn't need to. She'd already made her point. Ellie's POV, 7:58 am, she waved goodbye like she always did, small, slow flutters of her fingers, her thumb tucked in like her therapist had taught her. The school bus pulled away, and Ellie pressed her cheek against the window. The glass was cold. It always was. That morning felt strange, even for her. Something in her stomach twisted. Maybe it was the cloudy sky, or maybe it was the way Karen had looked at her 2 days ago, that tight, angry smile stretched across her face like tape holding something rotten together. Ellie entered through the side gate, limping a little from the weight of her backpack. Her braces clicked with every step. She turned the corner down the maintenance hallway, just like always. That's when she heard the voice. Ellie. She turned. Karen was standing by the stairwell, holding a clipboard and wearing a school visitor badge. We're doing a safety check. I need your help. Ellie hesitated. She was used to being pulled for special sessions, speech therapy, motor drills, testing. The adults always had clipboards. Karen smiled. Come on now, you're a smart girl. Something in Ellie wanted to run, but she didn't know where. So she followed. My POV. 8 a.m. James was already gone. I poured my second coffee of the morning and sat by the window, scrolling through emails. A familiar notification popped up. Karen has posted in Whispering Oaks HOA group. Out of town for the weekend. Son with face, please forward any neighborhood issues to HOA VP. Don't forget to water your plants. I rolled my eyes. Of course she had time for Facebook. She never missed a chance to remind everyone of her authority, even while sipping overpriced lattes in another state. I didn't know it yet, but Ellie was already underground. Ellie's POV, 8:10 a.m., the door was heavy. Karen held it open, just enough for Ellie to slip inside. The stairwell was dark, musty, the kind of place that made sound disappear too fast. We just need to check a pipe down here, Karen said, walking ahead. Ellie followed slowly. Her foot missed a step and she stumbled. The basement lights flickered once, then died. Karen's voice echoed behind her. Wait right here, okay? Ellie nodded. She looked around. There were boxes, old desks, a mop bucket tipped on its side. It smelled like wet dust and mold. Then the door slammed. Click, a sound Ellie knew well, the sound of a deadbolt locking. My POV. 10:43 a.m. I was shelving books at the library when my phone buzzed. It was the school. Mrs. Langford? Ellie wasn't in class today. I dropped the book. What do you mean? She was marked for early dismissal. No, she wasn't. She went to school. I saw her get on the bus. There was silence on the other end. We'll check the sign-out logs. My hand shook. Somewhere deep in my chest, panic bloomed like wildfire. Ellie's POV, 11:17 a.m., she cried quietly at first. Maybe someone would come soon. Maybe it was a mistake. But it got colder and darker. Her bunny was missing. She must have dropped it upstairs. Her speech tablet beeped once, then died. She screamed, but no one answered. She banged on the door. Her fingers stung. She kicked it with her brace. Pain shot through her leg. She screamed again, then stopped. The silence was worse than the dark. My POV, 11:35 a.m., the school had no record of anyone officially checking Ellie out. I called James. She's not here. I told him. She's not anywhere. I didn't wait. I got in the car and drove. I didn't know where I was going, the school, maybe the police, maybe hell, because that's what this felt like. I checked the GPS Karen's post had said, out of town. But she'd used her override code this morning. How? Why? A thought hit me so hard I nearly ran a red light. The basement. Ellie's POV, 12:08 p.m. She curled up against the wall, trying to keep warm. Her hands were purple. Her stomach made noises she couldn't understand. Time didn't feel real. Only the dark was real. She whispered to herself, "Mommy's coming. Mommy's coming." She imagined the sun, the sidewalk chalk, the elephant hoodie. Then she started to forget what outside felt like. That's when she heard something. A faint noise. Steps? No voices. Upstairs. Muffled. Like angels under blankets. She screamed again. This time, someone heard. My POV, 12:22 p.m. By the time I arrived at the school, 2 squad cars were already outside. Ms. Hannah, the first-grade teacher, was crying. I heard something, she kept saying. I swear it sounded like a child. The janitor fumbled with the basement key. His hands were shaking. The door opened. The smell hit me first, damp concrete and fear. Then the sound, small gasps. Then her. My baby. On the floor. Pale. Eyes red and wide. She looked at me like she wasn't sure I was real. I ran to her and lifted her into my arms. She was shaking. Ice cold. She whispered just one word. Karen. Later that night, 10:17 p.m., they hooked her up to N4. The nurse said her vitals were stable, but her blood sugar had dipped dangerously low. For more hours, and she could have gone into shock. I sat by her hospital bed, holding her hand. James stood in the hallway, yelling into his phone. Don't tell me it's circumstantial. She used the override code. The badge log proves it. But even then, even with a frightened child in a hospital bed and a digital trail, the school wouldn't act. The district lawyer said they needed direct proof of intent. And Karen? She posted another picture the next day. Sunset by the beach, sunrise, hope everyone back home is staying warm. No shame, no fear, no consequences. We thought she hated Ellie before. We thought her chalk drawings, her speech device, her slow steps. We thought that's what Karen couldn't stand. But this wasn't about inconvenience anymore. It was punishment, a message, to remind us that no matter how right we were, she still held the keys. There's a moment when a parent realizes their child is missing, not just late, not just lost, but gone. That changes something deep in the soul. Logic shuts down. Breath becomes fire. Every second stretches like rubber ready to snap. That was me, pacing the hospital hallway, with my daughter barely clinging to warmth on a cot behind the door, and still, no one was treating this like a crime. The officer assigned to the case, a weary man named Halford, had kind eyes but tired ones. He listened patiently, took notes, nodded. We're reviewing the building logs, he said. She was locked in a basement. I replied. Someone used an override code that only 2 people had access to, Karen and the school principal. Halford sighed. It could have been a technical glitch or a mistake. I wanted to scream, but Ellie stirred beside me, and I swallowed it down like poison. Then something shifted. Around 9:30 p.m., Ms. Hannah, the teacher who'd heard Ellie's cries, came to the hospital with a flash drive. She said nothing at first, just handed it to Officer Halford and whispered. I wasn't sure if it was real, but I couldn't keep it to myself. It was grainy, shaky footage from her phone. She'd taken a clip outside the stairwell earlier that week. Karen, standing near the side entrance with the master key badge clipped to her belt. She was using it, practicing maybe, or just making sure it worked. She even looked into the camera for a second and adjusted it. She said she was helping with inventory, Ms. Hannah added, but something about her tone felt off. Halford plugged the flash into his laptop. He didn't say anything, but his posture changed. By morning, an IT technician from the district retrieved door access logs from the internal servers, not just timestamps, but IP access trails. The override badge was activated from Karen's HOA-issued laptop. A physical override had also been recorded, using the school's wireless admin dongle on site. The signal was pinged precisely from the basement hallway. There was no way she could have done it remotely. And Karen? She was already gone again. Her house sat empty. Her lawn was overwatered. A notice on the door read, "Out of service, HOA travel retreat." Except we later learned there was no such retreat. She'd faked the notice. She wasn't in Florida. She'd gone to her sister's place in Vermont. The media got wind of it by noon. Local news ran the headline, "Disabled child found locked in school basement. Mother alleges HOA president involved." That's when the pressure started building. Parents marched to the district office. A petition began circulating. Someone leaked Karen's name. Protest signs popped up in front yards. "Justice for Ellie, HOA tyranny ends now." I watched it all from a hospital window. Ellie still hadn't spoken more than a few words since the rescue. Her body was healing, but her eyes, they looked far away, like she was still there, still under concrete. And while the world debated policies and procedures, I was watching my daughter disappear into herself. 2 days later, Officer Halford returned with news. "We've contacted Karen. She's refusing to return voluntarily. Then arrest her." "We can't. Not yet." Her lawyer claims she loaned the override badge to the school as a courtesy, says someone else could have used it. "So she just walks away?" Halford nodded slowly. Without direct eyewitness testimony or video of her locking the door, the DA's hesitant to press charges. They don't want the case to fall apart in court. I sat there stunned. The law was supposed to protect the innocent, but now it was hiding behind technicalities. "Then let me say it," I whispered. "Put me on camera. I'll say everything." He paused. "Are you sure?" I nodded. "If the system won't act, maybe the public will." That night, I went on local TV. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just told the truth. That my disabled daughter had been deliberately locked in a basement. That the only person with the means, motive, and access was a woman who had spent months targeting our family. That the system knew. The school knew. And still nothing. By morning, the video had gone viral. Within 24 hours, Karen's address had been flooded with reporters. Her sister's home was surrounded. She gave a single statement from a lawyer's office. "My client denies all allegations. She is a respected member of the community and has been unfairly vilified. Any irregularities in access logs were technical in nature." But no one bought it anymore. The silence had been broken. And that was the true breaking point. Not just the horror of what she did, but the unbearable realization that she almost got away with it. That if not for one teacher's doubt, one technician's log, and a mother who refused to stay quiet, Ellie would have just been another headline we never read. The days after Ellie's rescue blurred together in a haze of hospital visits, media calls, and unanswered questions. But one thing was painfully clear: there would be no easy justice. Karen had vanished. Not legally, not technically. She still lived at the same address, still drew the same paycheck from her HOA post, still signed her name on community emails, but she was untouchable. Sheltered by loopholes, protected by lawyers, hidden behind layers of HOA policy, school board red tape, and a wall of silence from the very people whose job it was to act. Ellie didn't speak for a week. When she finally did, it was a whisper. One word: dark. She refused to go near stairwells, panicked if the door to her room was closed too long. She clung to me in grocery stores, flinching at loud sounds. The sparkle in her eyes gone. Therapists called it post-traumatic regression. Her brain, they said, had temporarily retreated to protect itself. I didn't need the diagnosis. I saw it every night when she clutched her stuffed elephant so tightly its seams began to fray. Meanwhile, the investigation dragged. The school conducted its own internal review. Their conclusion? No staff members were found to have acted with negligence or malicious intent. The district issued a formal apology, but no firings, no changes in protocol, no admission of systemic failure. The HOA? Silent. Karen remained president. We filed a civil lawsuit against both Karen and the district for endangering a minor, unlawful confinement, emotional trauma, and abuse of power. Our lawyer warned us it would be an uphill climb. "She's clever," he said, "and her defense will argue this was a misunderstanding, technical error, miscommunication, maybe even Ellie's own confusion." Confusion. I said, "She was locked in a basement." He nodded. "I believe you. But courtrooms don't run on belief. They run on proof." But something had changed. Because this time, People were watching. Parents started organizing. HOA members began resigning in protest. Community groups posted flyers. If it happened to Ellie, it could happen to any child. A GoFundMe to support Ellie's recovery reached $80,000 in a week. And still, Karen said nothing. Until the subpoena arrived, Karen's deposition was a masterclass in evasion. Every question, every accusation met with a calm shrug or legal deflection. I don't recall. That was standard HOA procedure. I was not aware that the child was in distress. I was on a pre-scheduled vacation. Our lawyer leaned forward. Did you use your override badge to enter the school on the morning of April 3rd? Karen smiled faintly. I may have. I don't recall specifically. As HOA president, I occasionally assist with facility checks. Did you personally lock the basement door after leading a disabled child inside? No, absolutely not. That would be unthinkable. But you had the only recorded entry at that time. System glitch, perhaps. The courtroom fell silent when Ellie testified, via recorded video, carefully prepared by her therapist. In it, she sat small in her chair, her speech device beside her. But when asked to point to the person who locked her in, she didn't hesitate. She pressed a button, Karen. The camera zoomed in as she stared straight ahead. It was only one word, but it was enough. By the time closing arguments ended, the entire city seemed to be holding its breath. The jury deliberated for 2 days. The verdict? Karen was found liable. Not criminally, there was still reasonable doubt. But civilly, she was ordered to pay damages for emotional distress and wrongful confinement. The district was fined for procedural failures. And most importantly, Karen was removed as HOA president by a 91% community vote. Her power gone. She sold her house a month later. No goodbye, no apologies. She simply vanished. But justice is never complete. Ellie still wakes from nightmares. She still avoids basements. And every time I hear keys in a lock, my heart skips. But we fought. We didn't let it slide. And maybe, just maybe, we stopped the next Ellie from being lost in the dark. Sometimes the scars that don't bleed are the ones that ache the longest. It's been 8 months since that day in the basement. Since Karen. Since the system failed and the community awoke. Ellie is back in school now. At a new one, with new teachers, where no one dismisses her voice or stares at her for being different. She walks slower than the other kids, but she walks proudly now, because she knows she survived something meant to break her. The first time she drew chalk on the sidewalk again, I cried, not just because she'd finally returned to doing something she loved, but because she bent down, looked up at me, and whispered, "No more hiding." That simple sentence carried a weight most adults couldn't hold. We still live in Whispering Oaks. We thought about leaving, thought about running far from every street corner, every HOA policy, every memory etched in shadow. But we stayed, not because we forgot, but because we refused to let fear claim more ground than it already had. I sometimes wonder what Karen thinks now, wherever she is. If she still tells herself she was misunderstood, that it was just a mistake, that Ellie was never really in danger. But even if Karen never faced prison bars, she faced something worse, exposure. A mirror held up to her cruelty in front of the very community she tried to control. And maybe that's the quiet justice we don't talk about enough, the kind that isn't served in a courtroom, but in the court of human conscience. This story was never just about a child being locked in a basement. It's about the slow violence of bureaucracy, about how silence and inaction can be just as dangerous as overt cruelty, about how people with small titles can wield devastating power when left unchecked. It's about how easy it is to look away, to say that's not my business, or she must be exaggerating, or let's not stir the pot. But the pot was already boiling, and it boiled over when someone dared to draw butterflies on a sidewalk. So, to anyone watching this who has ever been ignored, silenced, dismissed, to every parent who's been told to settle down or stop making a fuss when fighting for their child's dignity, don't. Make the fuss. Raise your voice. Be inconvenient. because sometimes that's the only thing that stands between a child and the dark. Clapperboard if this story moved you. Don't let it stop here. There are more voices like Ellie's, more stories buried under silence, behind polished fences and quiet HOA rules. White heavy checkmark subscribe to stay informed. Thumbs up like this video to push the truth forward. Speaking head comment if you've ever faced HOA abuse, witnessed injustice, or just believe in standing up for what's right. Bell, and hit the notification bell. Because the HOA stories is just getting started. We don't tell stories for entertainment. We tell them because they matter. Because they've been ignored for too long. And because someone, somewhere, needs to know they're not alone. This is the HOA stories, where silence ends and truth begins.